caster, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had some grant money from a thing I'd done at the university that I had to. It was one of those deals where if I didn't spend it, pretty quickly, I was going to lose it, and so I bought. I'm teaching a podcasting class next semester, and so I bought a roadcaster setup and gonna play around with that some during the summer, and some ideas for what I can do.
That sounds very interesting.
It's it's a nice little setup. I like the roadcaster a lot. I mean, it has a lot of soft keys on it, so you're not making any noise while you're recording. It's a really cool interface.
Who are you talking to like that? Gus. Stupid dog, come here. Anyway, so Money in the Bank is coming up. Channy, are you watching? Are we watching, Channy? Do you want to watch Money in the Bank?
When's that?
Sunday. At 7, probably. So I know you'll be at work, but when you come back, I'll probably have it on, and I'll be probably in here.
I'll probably put it on, honestly. I'll join you.
I'll probably be in here with it on, so just let me know. Look at the dog. Look at him. He's trying to escape. I don't know why Shaylin put him in here, but he must have been making her mad. So anyway, what'd you say?
So I'm also recording Game 4 tonight, right now, so I can watch that later. Because it should have started 17 minutes ago.
So let's see. Matches for Money in the Bank. There are 6 matches. Let's see what we think is going to happen. So first match, I don't know if these are in order. Probably, I would hope they're not in order, but this is the first one on this list. You've got the Money in the Bank ladder match for the men. You have Ricochet, John Morrison, Riddle, Drew McIntyre, Big E, Kevin Owens, and King Nakamura, and Seth Rollins. A lot of people. Eight superstars in the Money in the Bank. Lowry, what do you think? What are your predictions for that match? Who is going to win the men's Money in the Bank match this year?
I mean, this is a tough lineup for the men. I don't know that there's an obvious winner out there, but then I feel like they've purposely gone out of their way with the men's Money in the Bank ladder match the last couple of years and tried to sort of swerve people, keep you from knowing who was going to win. I mean, I don't think anyone had Otis winning the match last year. And
did he get to use his? Did he use it?
No. So he lost the Money in the Bank briefcase to the Miz at pay-per-view, and then the Miz cashed in shortly thereafter.
By Bobby Lashley. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a waste of. I hate when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were figuring it would elevate him just by him having the briefcase, but they never really intended for him to use it. I mean, if I had to pick here, I would imagine that it's probably going to be Riddle, just because then they could do a lot of really interesting things with Riddle. Not really understanding why Randy Orton is irritated by the fact that this guy basically took what should have been, in Randy's mind, his spot in the match. Interesting. And he goes on to win what should be his Money in the Bank briefcase.
Yeah.
And, it could set up some potential feuds there. I mean, I can see that storyline sort of playing out. I could see. I would say that Seth Rollins could win it, but I mean, if let's say Seth Rollins wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, I don't see who he's supposed to build heat with. They're not going to have him face Roman. They're not going to do that heel matchup on SmackDown, and I don't see Lashley losing the belt anytime soon. So if that's the case, then I don't think it makes sense. I think it has to be a babyface that wins, and Riddle makes the most sense to me. I think that they could be positioning Ricochet potentially to take
that would be. I think that's mine and Chaney's pick for who we'd want to win. Although I think it would be the only chance they give it to Ricochet is if they have him planning to go against Bobby Lashley and winning, because he's not. I mean, Roman Reigns is too big. I think they're building up for a potential John Cena match at SummerSlam. If that really happens, and they're not going to put it on him, and he's certainly not going to challenge John Cena anytime soon. So you've got that side of the storyline that seems like it's already being taken care of. And so on the flip side, you know, as much as I think Bobby Lashley could lose to Kofi, I think that they've done a great job of making him look like he was going to lose. But I would not be surprised if Kofi loses this match. I expect him to, as much as I love him as a wrestler and love what he can do. Seeing him not in the Money in the Bank ladder match is kind of like seeing him not in a Royal Rumble. You know, you look forward to seeing those matches because you know he's going to do some ridiculous stunt to keep himself in. And I fully expect that to be Ricochet's spot in this one, because he's really the only true high flyer besides John Morrison, but John Morrison's significantly older. He's the only high flyer in the match. And so I'm sure there's going to be a big spot for him, which it's kind of weird the way that it has gone. I mean, you think traditionally ladder matches, you either have powerhouses against powerhouses in some type of like, we're finally going to destroy this feud type of match. But then you get, you know, pure athletes, like you think about the Hardy Boys and all of their, and Edge and Christian, who are not high flyers per se, but certainly incredibly athletic superstars. You know, you get them in a match like that. But how these matches have been going the past couple of years, I mean, even having someone like Otis in the match is something that you do not expect, although he definitely has more athleticism than most, very Vader-esque in the way that he can do things for his size. But even that it's still odd to have this big of a matchup in a ladder match, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right in terms of what Ricochet's role is going to be in this match. Like he's taking on the Kofi role. And I think to a certain degree, Morrison is doing the same thing. I mean, I think they sort of said, we've got to have some guys in there that are gonna, do crazy Jeff Hardy-esque sort of spots and just kill themselves in this match for your entertainment. Take years off of their lives and their careers.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if I had to put my money on someone, I would say Riddle is gonna win this match. I wish I could say Matt Riddle, because it annoys me to no end. When
so sick of them doing that.
They did the same thing to Chauncey. I just saw, this last SmackDown, they Chauncey Blackheart and Tegan Knox made their main roster debuts, and they cut both their names down. Now it's just Knox and Chauncey.
So that's what's interesting about that is that's the name of their tag team, Knox and Shotzi. But like if you look on WWE website, Shotzi Blackheart is listed as just Shotzi, but Knox is listed as Tegan Knox on the website in the Superstar.
So they're letting her keep her name.
I don't know. It's very, very interesting. But I wish they would stop giving people names and then changing them and it meaning nothing. I mean, dropping Matt from Matt Riddle was simply pointless. Even Rusev. I mean, Rusev is definitely a much more daunting name than Alexander Rusev, but it's for him, I guess it serves a purpose. But for most of these name changes where you're just dropping the name, it's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to get me invested in a character in NXT and they're going to be there for 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly you're going to bring them up to the main roster and you're going to say, oh, no, that name that you've been saying for 3 or 4 years? No, we're not using that. Don't be ridiculous.
It's like people aren't allowed to have last names. Like, sure, they're ring names. I get it. But, I mean, like, give them a first name. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's such ticky-tacky, micromanaging garbage. I have no time for it.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next Money in the Bank ladder match, we have Asuka, Naomi, Alexa Bliss, Nikki, Ash. I don't know if that's what whatever. Liv Morgan is Nope, I'm sorry. That was Mandy Rose, who's on her way to NXT. So Liv Morgan, Zelina Vega, welcome back. Natalia, and to be determined, we still don't know that 8th spot in that match, I suppose. Any predictions there? I mean, I think Alexa Bliss is going to have a spot or two of her match. I just wish there was some transformation so she can come back. I am so sick of her non-wrestling matches because she's an incredible athlete, an incredible wrestler, and she's just losing out on her abilities to show that. So that's a very interesting point, Gage. I think I actually did read that somewhere recently.
Yeah, he had to admit to so that there were a couple of things. He had to admit to a scandal where it became very obvious he had cheated on his wife with another wrestler, and I think the same wrestler who posted some screenshots that made it clear that he had been doing that had accused him of raping or sexually assaulting her while they were both on the indies, and I mean, he denied that, and she said that he did do it. And I think the WWE actually, considered taking some action for a little while, and then they didn't do it. I honestly think that part of the reason that he sort of slipped under the radar to a certain degree is because the timeline may be a little messed up for me here, but I feel like that was happening at around the same time that the stuff with Velveteen Dream was going on, and so two guys that they had both spent a huge amount of time building up, and I think they felt like they knew they were going to lose Velveteen Dream sooner or later because of his accusations, and they were just determined they were going to keep one of the two of them, so they brought Riddle up. I haven't really heard anything more about those accusations, so I don't know if she brought charges against him or if it was just she made the accusation and then that was the end of it. But a lot of
interesting things,
shady stuff going on in the WWE.
Yeah. So back to the match. We're getting sidetracked. It's a great conversation. I'm loving it. Well, who do you think is coming out on top of that one? I mean, there's a lot of wild cards. I mean, I don't think Asuka wins for a second time. Zelina Vega would be huge as a return to come back and win. I'm intrigued to see who this 8th contestant is going to, this 8th superstar to come into the match. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, this is another one of those where I'm very torn as to what they're going to do here. I could see the logic, like you say, with Zelina Vega kind of coming back to win. I was honestly kind of shocked that they brought her back at all, honestly, especially after losing Aleister Black to AEW. But I don't know. I don't see Zelina winning, mostly because I don't think Zelina has the in-ring skill set to be, the face of the company in that female role. I really think that whoever that 8th person is going to be, and I don't know if they're going to bring in some Hall of Famer, some legacy star, maybe Beth Phoenix comes in or somebody like that.
That Sonya Deville is going to get back to wrestling, and then she's just going to take that spot for herself.
That would actually kind of make a little bit of sense to me, given the way that they've sort of handled her the last few weeks on SmackDown. I mean, because she's been doing this thing where she comes out and she just sort of unilaterally says, I'm giving a spot in the match to this person.
Which was such an odd change from her as a full-time performer to all of a sudden this managerial role without any announcement that it was happening. It's kind of like Adam Pearce becoming that on-screen personality kind of randomly. So a lot of random, unexplained happenings in the WWE these days.
But I mean, I could see that being like a kind of a slow build to maybe her turning heel and, returning to active competition. I mean, that could work. That could be fascinating, but there's really no one in that match that I look at and go, oh, that's an obvious choice for who's taking this. And I think it especially gets thrown up in the air a lot because of the Bailey injury. This ACL tear or whatever it was is. I think that just kind of throws the whole thing completely up in the air.
Maybe this is Becky Lynch's return. Maybe we'll see her as an 8th spot, and she's coming back. That's because we know she's coming back. We know that return is coming soon. There's rumors of it happening at SummerSlam, so I guess we'll see. However, that would really be a shock to, I think, to most people. She comes back and reclaims her spot as the man, and she could have a great program with Bianca Belair. She could also have a great program with Rhea Ripley, who I'm hoping there's a clean finish to that match, jumping kind of to the next match on the card, or on the predictions at least. Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, who can't seem to have a clean ending in any of their matches. I don't know. So, that would be it would be fascinating in either direction they would go. I think they'd probably put her for the brutality aspect against Rhea Ripley, or that caliber, or even taking the crown from Charlotte if she does win. There would be that animosity, although we've seen that match played out 100 different ways, 100 different times. So I think it would be interesting to see her and Rhea Ripley go head-to-head. But also, you got Becky Lynch coming back as the heel character she was against the babyface Bianca Belair, and you've got two incredible athletes who can do a lot of different things. Although, the more and more I watch Belair's matches, she's making a lot of, there's a lot of botched finishes in a lot of these matches. The hair at Backlash, I think we had briefly talked about that in our personal communication. That botch where the hair was supposed to be wrapped around and she missed that. There was a botch in Hell in a Cell. There's a lot of, I'm not sure if she's just getting too excited. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not her. Maybe it's someone else and they're just not working well. But she's making a lot of mistakes, at least from the outside looking in. So maybe it is this time that she's going to drop her championship.
Oh, I don't. Well, it is possible. I definitely don't think she's dropping the title at Money in the Bank, because I can't see them putting the title on to Carmella. She has practically no heat on her right now.
That match is moved to SmackDown, right?
Yeah, that's moved to SmackDown. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I called it a Money in the Bank match, but it's technically not.
Technically not anymore. It was supposed to be, but
right.
Bailey.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think that Bianca had one of the great matches, of all time at WrestleMania. It was a terrific moment for both her and Sasha Banks, and just incredibly well wrestled. I don't think that they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna take the belt off of Bianca for a while. It's really gonna take, somebody special coming back, I think, to take the belt off of her. Whether that is, like you say, Becky Lynch coming back and taking it off of her would be very interesting. Although I think it would be a huge mistake to bring Becky back as a heel. When Becky Lynch comes back, she is going. It's going to be a gigantic pop. Just a huge pop for her. Trying to get the audience to immediately hate her after she's been gone for whatever it's been now, 10, 11 months.
I guess that would make sense for a program with Rhea Ripley, because she would be the face in that category. And then
she would, yeah.
Then there's another program with Charlotte. There's that animosity, which would play out. I want to do everything to avoid Charlotte being in the spotlight. I think we've talked about this prior. I'm not a fan of her, period. So it's just.
Although I will say,
someone else would have a chance.
When Becky Lynch comes back, it seems obvious to me that she's going to be on SmackDown, because that's where Seth is, and they're not going to break those two up. They're going to let them travel together, right? So she's going to have to go on to SmackDown so that she travels with her husband. which means that, either you bring her back as a face and you just, I mean, you could do a face against face match and it would be fine. I mean, people would still accept that, I think. But yeah, I mean,
that's a good point too. And then again, there's a lot of rumors happening. Nobody knows what's happening at all, but there's supposedly a draft coming up. It was scheduled originally, I think, for SummerSlam-ish. I think the Monday after SummerSlam, I think they were planning on doing a draft. But I think that's also changed recently. So, I mean, maybe she'll come back now, and then maybe they'll switch things up at the draft. I mean, the live events are coming back. SummerSlam is the first. Is that the start of their touring? Is SummerSlam?
No. The first. This Friday is the first live show.
Okay, so I don't know. It's weird. It's just a lot of uncertainty going on, and a lot of unpredictable things that I want to predict really badly.
I mean, honestly, that's what I'm looking forward to about Money in the Bank more than anything else is that, whether and for SmackDown as well. I mean, this Friday SmackDown is just going to be, incredible because the first time you put a full live audience in front of them, I mean, you could bring the absolute worst wrestlers out there and have the most terrible matches you've ever had in your life. That crowd is going to be white hot. I mean, just blazing hot for whatever happens out there. And then especially, you put Money in the Bank not the next night, 2 nights from then on Sunday. It's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be instructive for a lot of what happens to the company over the next couple of months because to a certain degree, they've kind of been flying blind. I mean, you haven't had live reactions to any of the moves that they've made for the past year. So guys that they think are over may turn out not to be over at all. And people that they thought weren't, working out may actually kind of rise up the ranks. We'll see.
So skipping down the next two matches, the last 2 matches, because we kind of talked about Lashley Kingston, we've kind of talked about Ripley and Flair. Roman Reigns and Edge, I mean, I think it would be shocking to everyone if Roman Reigns, for some reason, were to lose this match. There's too many rumors about John Cena coming back and that program happening. I think he has to have the championship in order for that program to really mean something. And so there's really no way that Edge wins this. And the build for this match, incredibly quick. I mean, literally a month program to this match. I mean, I feel like it could have gone on maybe another month and then this gone at SummerSlam and been great there. I don't know what the rush was for, although I suppose they don't have a ton of. I mean, but this is the thing. He's been so dominant. I want to see him dominate just everyone on the route. Just put him against someone just to say he's, defending his championship. And I think that's a knock on. Well, it's creative in terms of Bianca Belair because she doesn't defend outside of pay-per-view. I mean, she's wrestled maybe 3 matches since winning the championship. I feel like she's not on a lot of the SmackDown episodes and just, wrestling. She's promoing, but there's no matches that are happening, at least in singles competition. And maybe that's, protecting her from injury because of course that could happen. And so they're protecting her so that she can be back when live touring happens. But I don't know. So it's interesting. Roman's kind of the same way. You see him in tag matches, or you'll see him when the Usos are fighting. You'll see him come out and cause havoc. But Edge just kind of came out of nowhere, and they rushed the program. So, I mean, it's going to be a good match. Probably I don't see Edge getting squashed, but he's going to lose.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no way Roman loses this match. I mean, he's well, I don't know. I'll back off of that a little bit and say it's possible he loses the match. There's no way that he loses the belt. I could see a DQ finish here. I could see a count out finish, something like that, where if they want to get the program out like you're talking about the SummerSlam, they could give Edge some sort of win where he could then go back on and say, well, technically I beat the world champion, or the universal champion, I should say. But, I got screwed out of the belt, blah blah blah, and extended out to SummerSlam. But they're not taking the Roman Reigns is the hottest thing they have in this company right now. They're not taking the belt off him.
Well, I have a question for you because you are, for all intents and purposes, the largest wrestling aficionado I've ever met in my life. And so there are two endings that were completely botched that really annoy me, and that I just have questions of. One, the Kevin Owens match. I mean, the referees are supposed to call the match regardless of how the ending is supposed to happen. If a mistake happens, they're supposed to call the match fairly, right? And so that match I think that might have been Backlash. The ref stopped counting because Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns messed up. They couldn't get the handcuffs off, and the ref just blatantly stopped counting. And then we had 45 seconds of watching them awkwardly struggle to get the handcuffs off, and they jumped in like nothing happened, like the ref hadn't already gone through the 6 count. So that, I mean, I get it. They didn't feel like rewriting the story. They didn't call the match. I don't know why that match was stopped and called that way. But going on from there, at WrestleMania, why is it that Roman was considered the winner of that match? Because the ending of that match was Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman. And so the pin, I mean, I get, we've seen double pins happen a million times before. It happens all the time. So it's just intriguing to me that I guess now that I think about it that way.
Are you're suggesting that technically Daniel Bryan should have also won the match because he pinned? I mean, I can see the logic there, but I think that I mean they've got a bit of this is like a little bit of wrestling logic, right? A double pin can occur when they want one to, but there have also been examples of wrestlers who, to show their dominance, would they'd have a jobber match, and it would be a handicap match where they pin 2 or 3 jobbers at one time just to prove, how dominant they were.
Yeah.
And I think that's, they certainly didn't want Edge and Daniel Bryan to seem like jobbers, but they had set in their mind that one of the ways they wanted to show the dominance of Roman was to have him pin both of them at once. And because he was the guy that was on the top of the pile, I mean, whoever's on the top of the pile wins in this case.
I guess that I don't know why I didn't think about it that way, because we've seen double pins, for example, as you explained, 1.5 million times before, but it just seems so wrong to do. It's annoying.
Here's the thing: if Daniel Bryan, if Bryan Danielson hadn't been at the end of his contract and had re-signed with them, then I think they probably would have gone a slightly different direction with it, and maybe he would have said, "Well, technically, I pinned Edge and you pinned me," but they could have made an argument, I suppose, for Daniel Bryan having more matches down the line. But I mean, they knew that Daniel's contract was going to be up in a matter of months, and that he wasn't going to re-sign. And so I think, in their minds, this was Daniel doing a favor on the way out, which is, from old school logic, is what you're supposed to do. You're about to leave. You give somebody the rub on the way out.
And Channy has to go to a meeting because he's a hater. So it's all good. We'll rock it out. Travis is on his way. He should be here shortly. He got stuck at the baseball game, so he's on his way. But yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. It's a very interesting Money in the Bank, because a lot of things can happen. A lot of different storylines can take place depending on how it plays out. So I'm rather intrigued to see what's going to happen, but I don't know. It's
well, maybe I've kind of had my head in the sand, because honestly, this is the first I've heard about the John Cena return.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors that he was coming back. they've said yes and no. He's filming a movie right now, but it sounds like his part in the movie is going to be finished in time for him to be able to come back. I mean, there are a ton of rumors about SummerSlam that they're bringing back a ton of people, which is kind of how people are. I think they're trying to explain away all of the releases because there's talks that Becky Lynch is coming back. There's talk of John Cena coming back. There's even talk of Brock Lesnar coming back. There was some mistaken graphics posted on one of the episodes. Paul Heyman was doing an interview recently where talking about, if Brock Lesnar comes back, where do his allegiances lie, that type of thing. I think that'll be an interesting program if he does come back. Is it a fight for Paul? Does Paul just be like, well, Roman, you were my guy, but my actual guy is back, so I'm gone? Or did they have a match like a, fight for a manager match? I'm sure that's happened at some point in the history of WWE. So that would be kind of interesting. So,
yeah, I mean, I could see Brock coming back. I mean, my understanding is that Brock kind of rubbed people the wrong way at Mania when he left because he didn't want to do business. He didn't like being asked to lose in the way that he was being asked to lose. And so, he kind of rubbed people the wrong way as he was leaving. But I mean, oh, well, who cares? Plenty of people have rubbed Vince the wrong way and done things that were not so great to him. I mean, the Ultimate Warrior basically held him hostage in a pay-per-view to get extra money out of him. And said, I won't go out there unless you pay me X amount of money over what my normal paycheck is going to be. And yet a few years later, he worked with the Ultimate Warrior again. I mean, if it's hard to do something that's so bad to Vince that he wouldn't work with you again. I can't think of too many instances where it's happened. Not that I can't think of any, but not very many.
Right.
So I could see Brock coming back. Uh-oh.
No, you're good. I'm just switching cameras.
Yeah, I could see Brock coming back. I mean, I think Becky, we always knew Becky was going to come back. I don't think that was ever in question.
Sure.
Now, once Ronda has her baby, it's possible that she's going to come back at some point. I think it's.
I don't know. I've heard she's talked about not wanting to come back. I don't know that we're going to see Ronda Rousey in a WWE ring again. I think she rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I think she made some negative comments about her time in the WWE that kind of pissed people off a little bit. So and she never really had a truly spectacular match, in my opinion. She was there, but I think that there's a lot of people that are already there that can do the job of a Ronda Rousey.
Well, after that fight a couple of nights ago, I would say once his leg heals, that Conor McGregor might want to think about making the switch over to the WWE.
He might definitely. He's got the personality for it. That's for sure. It'd be an interesting.
He does, and I think it's fair to say that Conor's real professional fighting career is behind him. I mean, outside of weird exhibition kind of things.
Yep. That's a good point. It'd be interesting to see if he would know how to reel it in. I mean, he's got that, I'll do what I want when I want to do it type of attitude. Can he exist in the world where Vince McMahon has all of the power to do everything and makes all the decisions? Will his pride get in the way of ruining the bag, so to speak? So,
I mean, maybe so, but I got the impression that Conor is also a guy who has a lot of loyalty to the people that he works for. I mean, I feel like there's a really close bond between him and Dana White. When he had the boxing match, supposedly he was talking to Dana White afterwards in the dressing room about apologizing to him, basically saying, I'm sorry, I let you down. I failed you by not winning this match. And Dana White going, are you insane? Like, this was a huge deal. We made a ton of money. Like, I don't care that you won or lost. So, I don't know. It's tough to say. my concern with Connor would be that he would be willing to do it for a couple of months, and then they might get bored and be like, this isn't for me. I mean, the only way
to work being a Cain Velasquez, who had an awful match against Brock Lesnar, that was simply disappointing. I didn't know what the point of bringing him on. I mean, he could have been another dominant force if they would have, but he just, he's a fighter, a real fighter, and sometimes that just doesn't translate, to the storyline aspect of wrestling.
I thought to a certain degree it was unfair to him. I mean, they pushed him out there obviously much quicker than he was prepared. Sure. He needed a lot more time before he was ready to go out there. Not ready for primetime player in that sense to steal from SNL. But I thought the other thing that was sort of immediately clear about Cain Velasquez was that he had no charisma for the business. I mean, like
he would have needed a Paul Heyman mouthpiece in order for him to be able to work. And I'm trying to think, Zelina wasn't with the company at the time. The language barrier might have been a concern if there is a language barrier there. And so there are no, to my knowledge, any managers, at least in the game right now, because there are not a ton of managers anymore. I think they're kind of, outside of Paul Heyman, they're kind of getting rid of that role, it feels like, for a lot of characters. I mean, even Karrion Kross and Scarlett have recently made that split, and she's going on to kind of a singles career. So it just feels like a lot of, and much to his detriment, I think, his character and just a lot of things worked so much better with her with him than without. And so I feel like there are no true managers that even at that time would have been able to make him an over character. I mean, it was clear that they were attempting. I mean, I understand the purpose, right? Cain and Brock have history from the UFC. So, Of course, he's now with WWE. So bringing Cain in, there's going to be that heat, that animosity between them. So people, maybe it was their attempt at more crossover. But they've really, outside of Brock Lesnar, are there any professional UFC MMA fighters who have made a successful transition to WWE or vice versa? I mean, CM Punk had a very short career in the UFC. His second loss, he had 2 losses. One was actually just recently overturned this past week. So, CM Punk, he goes out and he loses. Dave Bautista had a short career in the MMA. Brock Lesnar obviously was kind of successful. He was a champion at some point. So,
Shayna Baszler was an MMA fighter before she.
But we've seen what they've done with her, and even Sonya, not Sonya. Was Sonya in the MMA also?
I think Sonya might have had a career in MMA. I'm not 100% certain on that. I don't want to commit to that answer. But if we go back further than that, I mean, Ken Shamrock was very successful in WWE in the 1990s. To a lesser extent, guys like Steve Blackman and Dan Severn both had careers in the WWE. Jack Swagger had
really.
He went into MMA much later, but if we're gonna give CM Punk credit for dabbling in UFC, then I think Jack Swagger deserves, or Jack Hager, I guess, now deserves credit for he's wrestling not in the UFC, but or fighting in the UFC, but he's fighting in MMA promotions. I think he might have done maybe a Pride fight or 2, something like that. Sonya
Deville has 3 matches professionally in MMA. I don't think it was ever UFC, but she was she's 2-1 in her career. 1 knockout, 1 submission, and her loss was a decision. So, but modern day, Ronda Rousey, she had some success. She was a champion, so you had that. But I think they had to give it to her. I don't think you bring in Ronda Rousey and don't give her a championship. You know what I mean? Like that, to me, that would have been a very unfortunate program to not have given her. I mean, the hype was just way too high for her. What's up, Travis? The hype was just way too high for her coming in, that had she never have won a championship, I think we really would have been disappointed to see that. So,
I mean, it was pretty obvious from the second that she came in. You know, you know that she was gonna win a championship. I was honestly
giving her the Roddy Piper gimmick, you know, with the skirt, the plaid, the music, everything about it was okay. They're going to make her into something that's going to be a champion. So,
yeah, well, and you know, I thought, although she may not have made the best of friends with everybody backstage, I thought she did an amicable job for, you know, the time that she was there and what she was given. I mean, you know, Ronda Rousey did not embarrass herself by any stretch of the imagination during her run. But, you know, I mean, to your point about there not being more people who have kind of crossed over from MMA, you know, I would tell you, look, if you're a young man or woman who has the physical ability at the highest possible levels to wrestle or to fight in MMA or to be a WWE wrestler, you're going to choose to work in MMA because you could fight 2 or 3 times a year and make a much larger amount of money than you'll ever see in wrestling professionally. I mean, you can make, if at the very highest levels of MMA, you can make, you know, 10, 15, $20 million a fight. And I mean,
you won't sniff that in your career. Undertaker, The Rock, they might be the only, Stone Cold, maybe the only people to have ever sniffed or come close to that amount of money wrestling.
Yeah, you know, compare that to having to work 285 days a year, you know, going all over the country and all over the globe in non-COVID times. I mean, one of those sounds a hell of a lot more appealing to me than the other one.
Although I will say, you can only punch me for real a couple times before the money is just not worth it anymore. You know, would I take a punch from Mike Tyson now? I wouldn't take a punch for $20 million in his prime. I certainly would not do it now, because either way, that's real life damage that the money's not going to be able to fix that. You know, so the injuries I will more than likely sustain in UFC would be significantly worse than most injuries. Not that serious injuries don't happen in the world of professional wrestling, but you know, I'll take the less chance of dying from a kick to the head than the money.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, look, I've had that conversation with friends before, you know, like how much money would it take for you to let, you know, somebody like Mike Tyson punch you in the face? And it's like, well, I mean,
I wouldn't let him punch me in the leg. He would break my leg in half. He would break my femur. There's no way I'm taking a punch to the head. No way. Not happening.
Do I get to wear headgear when it happens?
Yeah. You know, can he punch me through a bubble? Can I bubble wrap? Travis Stevens, what's up, my man?
Hey, Alvin, man. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry for the delay. I wanted to be here a little bit earlier with you guys. I didn't know how long you'd be rocking here this evening.
Money in the Bank and making some predictions there, so it's all good. Channy had to dip out to a meeting, so it's you two tonight on the show. We're going to have a great time. I'm looking forward to it. We will do all of our introductions and everything like that in just a moment. Sit back and enjoy our brand new theme song. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of You Think You Know with your host of the evening, Alvin Johnson. My co-host, Channy, is out for the night. He was here and had to go to a meeting. So it's just me. This is your weekly trivia show designed to figure out how much someone really knows about a particular topic. On tonight's episode, I have brought my good friends Travis Stevens and Miss Dr. Lowry Woodall for an interesting competition. They will be going head-to-head in You Think You Know Wrestlers, professional wrestlers. So I will explain how the show works in just a moment. But will the two of you, I don't care who wants to go first, introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are and where your love and interest in professional wrestling has come from before we start the show.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Alban. Yeah, my name's Travis Stevens. I am a 90s wrestling junkie. I feel very confident in my ability to answer anything 90s related all the way up through the ECW years of early 2000, the Attitude Era, NWO, WCW. So, I'm looking forward to tonight. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And I think I have a very tough competitor against me here tonight. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out.
Thank you, Travis, for joining. And your tough competitor for the evening in our singles matchup, we have Dr. Lowry Woodall. What's up, Lowry? How are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here. And great intro, by the way. I liked that very much. Well done. I've been, first of all, I've been on one of your podcasts before, and we've talked about, my love of wrestling and the ways it's kind of trickled into my professional career in academia. I've done a lot of presentations about professional wrestling and pop culture at academic conferences. I'm working on a book on pro wrestling right now, and been watching. Started watching in November of 1990 and been watching ever since. But I like to think that I've got a good bit of knowledge pre-1990. Thanks to, in my youth, video cassettes, because I'm ancient. The network has made it so that you can watch all kinds of incredible stuff. Some things that I had never seen until they were on the network, honestly. I love this business. I know way too much about it for my own good.
Hey, now, Alban, I'm going to jump in. I don't want to just sound like a novice, because that was a very solid resume that the doctor just provided us. I did do. Now, I'm sure you could probably look this up and find it on the deepest parts of the internet. In 2002, with Off of the Wild Samoan and his, I guess at the time it was an independent feeder program for the WWE, WXW, run out of Allentown. I did 3 guest ring announce jobs for him, including a show in New Jersey, an all-woman show, which was very unique at the time. I did a spot with that, and so hey, I didn't want to sound like just some chump off the street who likes wrestling. All right, I have a little bit of background in the sport and in the business itself.
That's an incredible thing. I will say one of the things I've never gotten to do in my life, and I always wanted to do, was be a ring announcer for an indie promotion. So you awesome. Have lived one of my dreams.
There we go.
It does truly sound fascinating, and I've always wanted to do similarly. It's either you don't have the abilities to get into the ring and do the things that they're doing. So how do we get as close as possible without stepping into the ring? And that's probably the closest I would ever get, is something like that. So welcome you both to the show. I'm very, very excited to see how this episode plays out. So let me tell you about You Think You Know for the audience who might be watching and for the listeners who may be listening to this. So I'll set all the rules and let you know kind of how this is going to go as soon as my computer starts to cooperate. I'm running too many things all at one time, so the computer does not like that very much. So here's how the show works. This is You Think You Know, where we try and figure out how much someone knows about a particular topic. So there will be 15 trivia questions for you both this evening. You're getting the same questions being asked at the exact same time. Okay, all 15 of these questions, except for the bonus question. Oh, no, actually, the bonus question this week is multiple choice. There is a bonus question. It's pretty recent to the show. This is like the 3rd one that we've done, I think, with the bonus question. So you will hear 16 questions tonight. But anyway, I digress. So there are 15 trivia questions. For each question, you will have 30 seconds to think about your answer. Okay, please only answer at the end of that 30 seconds. That way, anyone who's watching this afterwards, anyone who's listening, has time to think about their answer prior to you giving the answer. No spoilers on this show. So you will see the questions on the screen. You will also hear them being read. Your timer starts once I have finished reading the final option. So if you read faster than I read, you'll be in luck. You get an extra 5 seconds. So you have 30 seconds from the time that I finish the last option the first time to provide me an answer. At the end of that 30 seconds, you're going to see the timer show 0, and I'm going to ask you one final answer. Those answers that I sent you, the A, B, C, and D, you're just going to hold those up to the screen. At the same time, that's how I'm going to make sure that one of you isn't cheating off of the other one, which is why you have your answers the way that you do. So at the end of that 30 seconds, flash me that screen, A, B, C, or D, and I will tell you whether you are correct or not, which means I probably should open the answer key for myself. The goal is just to see who knows the most about professional wrestling. So I got to tell you how this show is going to work, because I think I told Travis, but Lowry, I did not let you know how this is going to work tonight. Normally, these are just, trivia questions about the history of the sport. We ask random questions. Well, Channy and I did that already. So on tonight's episode, we are asking specifically about the wrestlers themselves. So each of these 15 questions that you're going to hear and see tonight, I will give you the real name of the wrestler. So, for example, this is probably the most common that most people would know. Mark Calaway is the Undertaker, right? So I would give you the name Mark Calaway. You would get 4 options to choose from. You would have to tell me what ring name that person wrestles under. And so I've got some deep cuts here, some that you may know, some that you may have just really have to guess for. But that's really the fun about You Think You Know, is how much do you really know? We've got wrestlers like John Cena who wrestles by his birth name. You're not getting any of those tonight. None of these names will be in really any way remotely related to their ring name. So we're just going to find out how much you think you know. Are there any questions about the show or how it's going to work?
I think it's pretty clear.
Nope. Sounds good.
Good. And I didn't forget anything. Okay. Without further ado, Lowry and Travis, welcome to You Think You Know. Question number 1. If I give you the name Robert Huffman, is that Big E, MVP, D'Lo Brown, or Booker T? 30 seconds are on the clock. Take as much time as you need. You got to wait till the end of that 30 seconds anyway. So I might as well kick back and relax, and we'll see how much you know. Robert Huffman, is that Big E, MVP, D'Lo Brown, or Booker T? 10 seconds. Does anyone know this for sure? Lowry?
I do.
Between 2. Oh, Lowry, you know it?
I do know this one, yeah.
Oh, man. All right.
I would not be surprised. It's just nothing surprises me with Lowry. All right.
We can hold these up now.
Your time is up. Robert Huffman, is this Big E, MVP, D'Lo Brown, or Booker T? Please, gentlemen, show me your answers now. There you go. Travis said letter C. And Lowry says D. The correct answer is D, Booker T. Robert Huffman goes by the name Booker T.
I mean, listen, I spent a lot of time in Texas, and he's from Houston.
I hear that does make a difference.
I've heard him referred to as Booker T. Huffman before, but I thought there was a trick with the Robert. I didn't know his first name, and I didn't want to. I didn't know if you were going to come right out the gate with a trick question, Alban. So.
I do not remember the order that I put these in. It's just completely random.
I will say, I mean, there could be.
However, I was thinking of it at the time.
there could be some names in here that I won't know, because I mean, I don't know the given name of every single wrestler that's ever
It would be rather impressive, I got to tell you. All right. And gentlemen, we're ready for question number 2.
We're ready.
Sure.
All right, here we go. Who is Phillip Brooks? Is that CM Punk, Evan Bourne, AJ Styles, or or Matt Riddle? I guess I should probably have written that as just Riddle, seeing as he no longer goes by the name Matt Riddle. But Phillip Brooks, CM Punk, Evan Bourne, AJ Styles, or Matt Riddle? Lowry, while we're in this last 15 seconds, are you a big AEW fan? Are you a fan of the promotion at all? I don't know if we've ever discussed AEW.
Yeah, I do like AEW. I mean, I don't watch them as regularly as I watch the WWE, but I absolutely do like the promotion.
All right, we'll talk more about that probably in the next 30 seconds, but our time is up. Phillip Brooks, is that CM Punk, Evan Bourne, AJ Styles, or Matt Riddle? Answers, please. The correct answer is A, CM Punk. Congratulations to you both. Travis, you're on the board. Look at that.
Look at that.
We get extra credit for knowing what the CM stands for?
No, but I don't know what it is. Travis, do you know?
As soon as you say it, I will remember.
Chick magnet.
Chick magnet. Yep, that's right. Didn't he testify, I believe, somewhere, and he had to explain what the CM stood for? I think it was with his lawsuit against the WWE.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is absolutely hilarious. I did not know that. See, even I'm learning things, and I'm not even playing. So that's great. Question number 3, 2-1. Pamela Martinez is better known by their ring name, Nia Jax, Nikki Cross, Bayley, or Sasha Banks? Pamela Martinez.
There's the 30 seconds. Sorry.
Yep. Sorry. I'm trying to figure out my layout here. It's all discombobulated. Pamela Martinez. Is that Nia Jax, Nikki Cross, Bayley, or Sasha Banks? Travis, you said you watch AEW, don't you?
I'm a big fan of AEW. I don't watch it as much as I did consistently when it first started a couple years ago, but I have them all on DVR and I try to play them back, especially when I know there's a good match.
Now I feel like I gotta start watching. I'm like a purist. I love the sport of wrestling, but I can't seem to pull myself away from WWE. But I guess maybe I'll have to check it out.
I do the same thing, by the way. I DVR it and then I have to go back and watch like 5 weeks of episodes at one time.
So, gentlemen, do we know who Pamela Martinez is? Is this Nia Jax, Nikki Cross, Bayley, or Sasha Banks? Answers, please. The correct answer is C, Bayley. Bayley is the correct answer. She does not look like a Pamela. I'll say it. Bayley
she doesn't look like a Pamela.
No,
but if you see a lot of the stuff backstage with her and Sasha, when they do like the documentaries and stuff, they always refer to each other by their real name. So
Sasha's name is Mercedes, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I thought I knew that one. That's the only one that I know. Nia Jax, couldn't tell you probably if I was being paid $1 million, probably couldn't say that one. So.
And Nikki is actually Nikki Cross's real first name. Her last name, it's not Cross. I'm trying to remember it right now off the top of my head, but Nicole or Nikki, I mean that is her real first name. And
Nicola Glenn Cross is her name.
Oh.
Nicola, and then Glenn Cross is her name. And she's married to Killian Dane?
Yeah, the Killian Dane. Killian Dane actually trained her.
Well, look at that. And he's no longer – is he in AEW now? Where is he at?
I think he's still going through his 90-day no-compete right now. But
and not everyone can be as lucky as Malachi Black to have an error on their contract to get 30 days as opposed to 90. What a mistake. I mean, that person, whoever wrote that contract, I guarantee you was looking for a job today. This is an interesting story. It's nothing to do with the game, but, we're just wrestling fans, and this is just what we do. Did you see or hear the story? This is a big scandal, I guess is the right word to describe it. There was a writer who was recently let go from their job with Raw, who admitted after being fired that she was not a fan of wrestling. Like she was a comedy writer, I believe, from a sitcom or from the network television genre. And she was hired as one of the head writers on Raw, and she was not a wrestling fan.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all.
It explains so much about the current state of WWE. But
yeah, and you guys can probably speak to this. I think there was a time in the early 2010s, maybe late 2000s, that it was, the writing room was made consistently of Hollywood writers. And you would have to think there's a handful of them that probably didn't even watch the product or weren't even wrestling fans growing up, but they have that resume. Vince McMahon wants them in there creating storylines and creating
all about the money.
Amazing. Yeah.
What's going to draw the most people? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would go even further than that and say, I mean, Vince really doesn't want people who, have spent their whole lives being wrestling fans or have been in the business their entire lives writing this product. I mean, what Vince's dream is to win an Emmy, and he doesn't think that's going to happen with Dutch Mantel and a bunch of other old wrestling guys sitting around the table writing this product, even though a lot of those guys would do an amazing job because this is what they've done their whole lives. It's what they know. He wants people that have written dramas and comedies and variety shows. I mean, he thinks that's the correct way to go. I disagree, but he's a billionaire, and I am a long way from that. So maybe he knows more than I do.
And when Dean Ambrose left, now John Moxley, he left and did Chris Jericho's podcast, and he would tell you some of the crazy ideas and some of the dumb things that the writers would have him do. And it just wasn't in his personality, and it wasn't in his personal character. But you're right. You think to yourself, hey, they're doing something right. They're $1 billion corporation. I mean,
they're making way more money than we'd ever see. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, look, and I don't necessarily think that the idea that you weren't a wrestling fan has to be a knock on you. I mean, you take a guy like Sting. I mean, Sting has openly talked about how he wasn't a wrestling fan before he got into the business. He got into the business because he was a bodybuilder working out at a lot of the same gyms that these guys were going to, and guys saw him there and they were like, oh my God, you're an incredibly good looking, incredibly well-built guy. Listen, I don't know what you have going on in your life, but you can make a lot of money doing this.
Let's cover you in face paint and go wrestle and run yourself around the room for a little while.
Make a little bit more money traveling the country instead of doing these fitness shows, right?
I mean, so yeah, I understand a lot of people get upset when there's somebody who gets to a really high position in the business who doesn't have this like lifelong deep love for it. But I mean, hey, I'm sure not every single football player that's been in the NFL grew up loving football, or every person that's played in the NBA loved basketball. I mean, at some point, somebody's going to look at you and they're going to say, you've got a very particular body type on you. How would you like to make a lot of money?
Yeah. And listen, I'm waiting for that. It's not going to happen for me, but I'm still waiting for the call. I'll go be a practice dummy somewhere making, $100,000 just to go get hit by someone. As long as it's not Mike Tyson, I think I could take a hit from almost anyone. As long as I got enough pads.
I think it's fair to say that if you're, 6'7", 6'8", or taller, at some point in your life, someone has asked you, would you like to play basketball right now? Because,
almost who's teaming with AJ Styles had that dude's a giant. He's ridiculously tall. I don't know how tall he actually is, 6'9", 6'10", and he had a failed basketball career. He was not very good. I looked at his stats, and it's a shame when someone that tall is bad at basketball. It's like you just reach your arm up for you should be able to do something. And now we see him very stoically wrestling with AJ Styles, although I don't think that there's much wrestling really going on there. Or just giant and walking around the room.
Kevin Nash played for the University of Tennessee, I think it was.
Middle Tennessee.
Where he had knee surgeries.
Yep.
And then became a bouncer and then a wrestler. And then Super Shredder.
WWE superstars over the years come from the personal security line of work. It's just like, dude, you are too big to be standing here at this club or protecting this person. Why don't you come over here and make a little money for a change? Hey, that was only question number 3. We got a long way to go, fellas. Let's get it done. Question number 4. Here we go. This man, Oscar Gutierrez, is better known by the ring name Carlito, Sin Cara, Eddie Guerrero, or Rey Mysterio. Who is Oscar Gutierrez. I would just like to say, not saying this is right or wrong, that's the answer, but Carlito was a huge pop at WrestleMania, at the Royal Rumble. I've been waiting for him to make a return. I would love to see him come back, and he didn't look bad. I mean, he looked in much better shape than he was in when he left, and then he just disappeared. I just wish he'd come back and spit an apple in somebody else's face. It would be a great time.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know if that was going to be a long-term hire for them, rehire for them or not. But I mean, he looked incredible. I mean, whatever he was doing, it was working.
He looked way better than he did when he was a regular on the show. But anyway, I digress. Oscar Gutierrez. Is this Carlito, Sin Cara, Eddie Guerrero, or Rey Mysterio? Gentlemen, answers, please.
I feel like I have to change my answer now, but
you definitely should have changed your answer. It was not Carlito either, though. It is D, Rey Mysterio. That is correct. I actually know that one. I think out of all of these so far, I would have definitely gotten that one had I been playing. That's the great thing about being on this side of things. I don't have to know anything because I'm not on the show. All right, question number 5. Here we go. This man, Robert Remus, was better known by his ring name, Jake Roberts, Sergeant Slaughter, Terry Funk, or Greg Valentine. Who is Robert Remus? Jake Roberts, Sergeant Slaughter, Terry Funk, or Greg Valentine?
I like this era a little bit more, Alvin. Let's stick
I threw this out there. I had to jump in and out of both eras trying to figure out superstars.
Super sad.
A lot of the more recent superstars have iterations that are close enough to their true given birth name that I had to go on some deep dives here. All right, Robert Remus. Is this Jake Roberts, Sergeant Slaughter, Terry Funk, or Greg Valentine? Answers, please. Letter B, Sergeant Slaughter, is absolutely the correct answer. Congratulations to you both. Look at that, Travis. And just like that, you're right back in the game.
Right back in it. I was confident with that when I lifted the phone quickly. It wasn't a hesitation. I was like,
big fan of WrestleMania 7. Big fan.
That was the Ultimate Warrior A&E documentary. I believe that was talked about a little bit, but all the WrestleManias in that time frame were pretty solid.
I think Sergeant Slaughter might be the only one of this that I actually remember as a character. I mean, Jake the Snake, obviously. I mean, that gimmick is hard to forget. I didn't see much of Terry Funk, although I'm pretty sure Terry Funk is in his 60s, and I believe he's still wrestling. I believe he has a promotion.
No.
He's not anymore.
No, Terry has. Terry's in his 70s, actually. First of all, but Terry has. He revealed either this week or last week that he has dementia.
He's not. He's okay. So he's definitely
not in real bad shape. But I mean, Terry Funk. I feel like a lot of people from my generation probably know Terry Funk best for his ECW run, which was excellent. You know, I mean, he did a lot of great work for them. But I mean, Terry Funk, fantastic work in the Southern Territories and in Texas in the 70s. Has a fantastic run, by the way, in the late 80s in the NWA, wrestling with Ric Flair for the NWA title right before they merged with WCW. I mean, great stuff. That at the very end of that classic run he had with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So Terry Funk was one of the judges for the last Steamboat Flair match. And after Flair wins that match, Terry cuts this great promo where he comes in and he thanks Rick and he's like, "Oh, you did a great job, Rick. You know, you're so great." And Rick gives him some kind of like backhanded compliment, like, "You were great in your time too, Terry." Terry takes that and he's like, "What the hell do you mean in my time? You know, like what the hell is that supposed to be?" And then Terry just annihilates him, and they had some fantastic matches. I love Terry Funk, is what I'm saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly don't love him as much as you do, but I still remember him a little bit. I just closed my answer key. I guess I can't go to the next question without that. Next question. Let's see how you do on question number 6. Donald Hager Jr. Does he wrestle by the name of Damian Sandow, Bo Dallas, Jack Swagger, or Drew Gulak? Donald Hager Jr. Does he wrestle by the name of Damian Sandow, Bo Dallas, Jack Swagger, or Drew Gulak?
Poor Bo Dallas.
I'm just gonna. I see. None of whom are currently employed by WWE.
Did they officially release Drew Gulak?
I think he was in one of the most recent.
Well, that's unfortunate. I didn't realize Drew got released.
I don't know. I'm gonna look because I might be misspeaking. But while I'm looking, please reveal your answers. Donald Hager Jr. Is that Damian Sandow, Bo Dallas, Jack Swagger, or Drew Gulak? The correct answer is letter C, Jack Swagger. I'm typing and doing two things at once, and it's not. Oh no, he's currently signed. He's still signed, I think.
It's so hard to tell because they use their talent so sparingly and so poorly that sometimes you can't tell if someone's still with them or not.
It says Wikipedia says he's currently signed to WWE, where he performs on the Raw brand. So, he was released. I don't know. It's so hard to tell with these things. Wasn't he supposed to have a match against Daniel Bryan and then was released before that took place? And then I think they did hire him back. Is that what happened?
That sounds right, but I mean, I don't recall specifically.
Who knows? There's too much to remember. Too many people getting released prematurely without ever having a chance to really shine. So it's too frequent, I think.
Thanks a lot, Nick Khan.
Yeah, man. Silly Cody Rhodes starting
AEW right now in the front office. It's very confusing because Tony Khan runs AEW, and there's a guy named Nick Khan who's like a VP of development in WWE. Incredibly high.
I get very confused when I'm reading articles between the two of them. I'm just like, I don't know which program we're talking about now.
And they're not related to each other, to the best of my knowledge. It's just pure happenstance.
All right, score is 6-3. Lowry, you have not missed a question yet, so we'll see if any of these are going to stump you. Travis, you just gotta hope for the best, I guess. Hope that he makes a mistake somewhere, and you don't.
I'm up against a ringer. I got to do my best now. I got to hope for a couple slip-ups.
You got a jobber in here with
come on, that's not fair. That's not fair.
Question number 7. Here we go. Sylvester Ritter is best known by his name, Junkyard Dog, Farouk, Mark Henry, or Viscera. How's that of a combination of errors there for you, Travis?
There it is. There's some crossover there for sure.
Far back and towards, Mark Henry's still, I guess. Well, he's a commentator for AEW, and he's not actually wrestling anymore.
He went the Paul Wright route. He's doing some backstage stuff, some commentary. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
AEW, otherwise known as people who were released by WWE, and they think they still have time left because the Ross. I just saw a picture. Actually, I think I can put it up here. Of people that were currently working for AEW who were formerly in WWE, and it is.
I think I've seen this graphic. It's like I love watching WWE guys in AEW. It's like 20 guys that used to work for them or something.
An insane amount of people.
At least a lot of the older guys are not putting on television and pushing to the moon right away. It seems like they're doing some different things with some different roles. So I don't want them to lose the organic feel that they have with the younger talent and the guys that, like you said, haven't really been used properly in other companies. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's much more about how you use people than where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. What is your answer? Sylvester Ritter. Is this Junkyard Dog, Farouk, Mark Henry, or Viscera? Junkyard Dog. Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct.
Gotta love the JYD.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love JYD. So I think that was one of my dad's favorite wrestlers. Junkyard Dog. Very
You talk about a guy that was insanely over in the territories before he got to the WWE. I mean, like I mean, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas area, like JYD was it, the real deal.
Man. I think my favorite on this list has got to be my man Ron Simmons. Farouk, that dude was a monster. His time at the APA, the Nation of Domination. I mean,
and he crossed over a few eras there himself, from the 80s all the way up to the 2000s for sure. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who worked in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I mean,
and he's always good. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, well, also one of the most legitimate tough guys in the history of the business. I mean, like, of all the people on this list, well, maybe other than Mark Henry, I mean, you don't want to make Farouk upset. Like, Farouk could really mess you up.
I love seeing those lists of legit tough guys, because some of them you wouldn't expect. Ron Simmons definitely one of them. One of my favorites is always Ming. When you would see Ming on, nobody would want to step to Ming in a WCW locker room.
Ming's legitimately one of the toughest guys ever, honestly. And another really legitimate tough guy that just passed away this week, R.I.P. Paul Orndorff. I mean, Paul Orndorff, a real tough guy, beat up Vader in the early 90s in a WCW locker room. He was wearing his shower shoes, and he and Vader got into a fight, and he put Vader down, like, with one or two punches. He was just like, I know you outweigh me by 100 pounds, but you're gone.
And any fight that takes place when a man's wearing shower shoes, it was a legitimate fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And all I have in response to that, and only Farouk could say it, but I'm gonna give him my best. Damn. All right, on to question number 8. Let's see how you do here. Question number 8. Steve Borden is best known by the ring name Goldberg, Test, Vader, or Sting. Speaking of Vader, is it him? Is it not? The world may never know. Steve Borden.
And only two of these people are still alive.
Yeah.
That is true. Two of whom are still wrestling. At least. I don't think Test has reappeared anywhere recently.
Well, Test is dead. So Test ain't wrestling anywhere.
Good point. That's you're right.
Test passed away. He passed away in the mid 2000s.
Although it would be a great angle had he shown up to a wrestling promotion here in the last couple of years.
The Undertaker.
It turned out it was all just like a ruse. Like this was all just.
It's like when Vince McMahon faked that bombing. It's just like he didn't really pass away. It was all storyline, just waiting for his return to glory. Sorry, Test, R.I.P. Steve Borden, who is it? Goldberg, Test, Vader, or Sting? Gentlemen, your answers, please. Sting is absolutely correct. Congratulations to you both.
Now, do you know who Sting started his career teaming with?
Of course not.
It was the Ultimate Warrior.
It was. Yeah, it was.
The Blade
he wasn't called the Ultimate Warrior at the time. He was called
a Dingo Warrior.
The Dingo Warrior, indeed. Yeah.
I'm learning so much today. A little before my time.
I didn't know out of that situation because it was awful teaming with.
Sure. Yep. Just two really, really jacked guys.
At the time, you don't like the 4-move wonder Ultimate Warrior. That's not. You don't appreciate those matches a lot.
Warrior. So there's a great story about the Warrior wrestling Andre in house shows in the WWE near the beginning of his time there, where they would do this spot every night where the Warrior would clothesline Andre like 3 or 4 times, and Andre would kind of like, topple but not fall over, and then finally the last one he'd fall over and get wrapped up in the ropes. And Heenan said that what would happen, because he was managing him at the time, he said that every time he would hit him those first few nights, Warrior was just hitting them like full speed. Like he had no sense that you could just fake this. He couldn't hurt Andre because no one could hurt Andre.
Right.
But it was annoying him, and he could tell it was annoying him because when he would go down and get into the ropes, you could hear Andre being like,
as a giant would.
The 3rd or 4th night, he had taken like 2 of the 3 or the 4, clotheslines he was supposed to take. But when it was coming up for the last one, Andre just put his hand up as Warrior was coming to him, and Warrior smacked directly into Andre's fist and nearly knocked himself out. And he said the next night after that, every time they do the spot with the clothesline, he was hitting him light as a feather, just as soft as could be.
That would be. And that would be.
Yeah, Andre apparently went in the back and he was like, "He'll learn. He'll get it. It's fine."
There's not many people I would want to throw my hat in the ring against, and Andre the Giant surely is not one of those people. I would have loved to have seen him once in person wrestling, or just like seen him somewhere. But that, talk about an impressive size of a man. I mean, he just disgusting. Unfortunately, that's part of his syndrome. However, dude was quite literally a giant. He's pretty great.
He's one of the most impressive human beings that's ever lived. I mean, what are you going to do?
And for your listeners who aren't too familiar, check out the HBO documentary that was done on him a few years ago. It was really well done.
Yeah. I agree. It was a good documentary.
Looks like I'm going to have to peruse. I know what I'm doing for the rest of the night tonight. Great. And I got to watch AEW, and I have to watch the documentary. Anything else I should watch?
I think he also holds the Guinness World Record for most beers drunk in a single sitting for 152.
Mm-hmm. That is
150.
I can't get through one. That's just beer is disgusting, but I can't even. At that size, I mean, it probably took about 75 to just get him tipsy.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you got to think about the size of his hand. I mean, a regular beer to you and me is like a baby sip to him. And he's just like, well, we're all done.
All right, on to the next question. This is question number 9 coming at you. Do you know who Barbara Koba is? Is that Kelly Kelly, Trish Stratus, Molly Holly, or Stacy Keibler? Barbara Koba, Kelly Kelly, Trish Stratus, Molly Holly, or Stacy Keibler? Lowry, you're not confident on this.
I will say up front, I am not as certain of this one as I have been of the other ones. This one, I'm not 100% on. I think I know which one it is, but I'm not 100% on it.
I'm going to go process of elimination here. I don't know, but I feel like I know 2 of the 4, so another 50-50 for me.
Well,
I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like I know for sure 2 of the ones it's not, and so I'm kind of left.
Well, why don't you show me what you got, and we'll see if either of you your process of elimination.
We went to the same place, so I don't know if answer or not.
And you're both incorrect. But at least you got the same answer. The correct answer is letter A, Kelly Kelly.
Is it really? I thought. Oh, okay. All right.
Yep. Kelly Kelly. Molly Holly. Let me see. Molly Holly. Her real name is Nora Benshoof, which is the worst name I've ever heard in the world. And as awful as Molly Holly is as a ring name, that one is worse.
Yeah, you can't go with Nora Benshoof.
Yeah. Nothing competes with.
For some reason, I was thinking that Kelly Kelly's real name was Barbara Blank. Was what I had in my head was Barbie Blank.
That's what she goes. That's her name as a model.
I see. Okay, because I thought that was the reason they went with the Kelly Kelly, because you already had the alliteration and they wanted to continue it on. So that was what was messing with me. All right.
Well, hey, you're still 8 for 9. You're at an 88% now. Travis, you are at a 5 for 9, which puts you at 55%. So we're making it. We're gonna see how well these last 6 questions go, and then don't forget about the bonus. That could also be your chance to come up here. All right, question number 10. Here we go. Andrew Hankinson. Is this Eric Rowan, Luke Gallows, Big Cass, or Braun Strowman? Again, I think Rowan did make the jump to AEW, didn't he? He's no longer employed by WWE.
I don't think he's regularly competing in AEW. He's done a few spots, but I don't know that I see him regularly. I could be wrong on that.
Do you anticipate Strowman making the jump, Lowry? Do you think that's where he's headed?
I think that it's possible, but they also already have so many big men in AEW. I don't really know if they need him or if they would want him.
I heard somewhere that he had said one point that he would never wrestle anywhere other than the WWE. But money talks sometimes, so talk is cheap. So I guess we'll find out.
About a guy who never had the chance to wrestle anywhere else because he just immediately went to the WWE. So I mean,
very true.
He made here's what I'll say. He made some very disparaging comments about guys working on the indies during the height of the COVID pandemic that I think he probably regrets now. So he showed his ass a little bit, and it's unfortunate.
All right, so who is Andrew Hankinson? Is this Eric Rowan, Luke Gallows, Big Cass, or Braun Strowman? Answers, please.
I'm also having to take a bit of a guess on this one.
And for the second time, you have answered differently, but unfortunately, this is incorrect. Andrew Hankinson is actually Luke Gallows, who is Doc Gallows, I believe, in the AEW right now. Yes, sir, indeed. Also, did I just see that Carl Anderson is wrestling for a championship? Is he a main eventer in AEW?
So I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, I can't wait for this, Travis.
I'm going to direct you somewhere. Now, you already have some AEW to watch, the HBO documentary on Andre the Giant. Find Twitter, Chris Brosnahan. I might be butchering his name, and I apologize. At Chris Brosnahan did a fantastic deep dive on the slow build story of Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page. If you guys can find that on Twitter, it's fantastic. I'd be happy to share it with you. But it details the relationships that Adam Page had with guys like Gallows, more specifically some of the Japan guys with the Bullet Club, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega. So that's where you want to go for a little bit of your AEW story as well. So dig into that a little bit too, Alvin.
And Adam Hangman Page, great wrestler, by the way. Just excellent.
All right. Now I have more homework. Travis, this is summer. I know the summer school ends tomorrow.
That's right.
But I'd like to enjoy the next couple of weeks before we go back.
We're going to keep you busy.
All right. Number 11. This should be a fun one. Let's see how well you know the international circuit. Anthony Corelli. Is Anthony Corelli known as Bruno Sammartino, Gorilla Monsoon, Santino Marella, or Tommaso Ciampa? This nice Italian name. Which very Italian man is Anthony Corelli? Bruno Sammartino, Gorilla Monsoon, Santino Marella, or Tommaso Ciampa? I see your thinking faces. This is very intriguing. Let's see how you do. Anthony Corelli is better known by his ring name, what?
I think I'm going the same way.
And I think that is a fantastic way to go because that is correct. The correct answer is C, Santino Marella. One of the most memorable finishers in history. You can't forget. I mean, I remember as a young WWE watcher, every time Santino, who was just the most ridiculous gimmick and never taken seriously, kind of like Shane Helmsley, a little bit in that respect. But you know the Cobra. You just something that absolutely would not work ever in the history of ever. But it was great for young kids to watch Santino. You got to love the Cobra.
It was always interesting to me because when Santino debuted, he debuted as a serious contender. He actually, I think, won either the Intercontinental or the U.S. title on his debut.
It was the Intercontinental champion.
And then he very quickly turned into this comedy act, which he was for the majority of the time he was in the company. But it's fascinating that for a minute there, Santino was taken very seriously in the company, and then almost immediately they were like, we made a mistake. You're a clown. That's what we're going to use you for.
I'm always interested by characters like that. They debut very hot. They clearly have an idea for them. And even the ones that may catch on with the crowd, something backstage just doesn't set right, and they suddenly become lost in the mix. It's interesting. And there's a few guys like that.
And that happens a lot. I mean, that happened with Fandango, who was extremely hyped coming in, and he had that feud with Chris Jericho. They had the WrestleMania moment, and then he disappeared into oblivion before with his partner, who he ended up partnering with. The same thing kind of happened. Tyler Breeze was huge coming up from NXT. The gimmick was never going to be a success at the main level, which was unfortunate. And they did have some recent success still in NXT. Unfortunately, they were both just released. But it happens a lot with I think it has a lot to do with the gimmicks that they have, and there's just some things that will not translate to the main roster. But when Santino, didn't he have a run? Correct me if I'm wrong. With Vladimir Kozlov as tag team partners / champions. Who, when he came out, I mean, I vividly remember Vladimir Kozlov in his debut. I mean, he was booked about as high as you could go in terms of sheer domination as a wrestler. I mean, it was big.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason that Kozlov lost his push is because it turned out that he was a brick in the ring. I mean, like he couldn't do anything. He was awful, and you can be awful and still be successful if you're charismatic. But Kozlov also didn't have that going for him, so they just found the most charismatic person they could think of, and they stuck them together.
Yeah. I wonder.
They're hoping a little charisma would rub off, but
I wonder what would happen if Lana would have been around at that time. Now, obviously, she's married to Miro, so they probably would never put them together. But that ravishing Russian, interpreter / manager role, I think she would have been incredible for him, at least getting him a little bit over to cover up some of his faultiness.
I mean, the nice thing about Rusev or Miro is that, I mean, he's actually talented, he's good. I mean, he's not great, but he's very good. And so you can work with somebody like that. You can build them, and you can make them a star. I mean, with somebody like Tyler Breeze, supposedly what happened with Tyler Breeze was that I think he was on the SmackDown roster at the time. He had kind of debuted up to the main roster at some point, and things were going pretty well, and he asked to leave after his match was over to get an early start on driving to the next town, and that's breaking kind of wrestler protocol. You're supposed to stay until the very end of the show to show respect to everybody else that's there. And so this put a bad taste in the mouth of the people that were booking the shows, and suddenly Tyler's, he's a bad guy. We can't let him do well. I don't know how much I really believe that. I mean, there could be some truth to that. I think he was also hurt by the fact that Tyler Breeze is a small man in the wrestling business. I mean, he's tiny compared to a lot of guys that Vince is going to want to put over. And even though the business is getting smaller, and guys like AJ Styles and Ricochet and people that would have never gotten opportunities 25 years ago are big stars now. You're still working from a disadvantage. If you're 6'5", you're going to have a much easier time in this business than if you're 5'10".
Good point. It's unfortunate. All right, on to question number 12. Let's see, what is the score right now? Did I give you both points? Lowry, you've missed 2 questions, right?
Remind me of my shame, yes.
So it looks like Lowry, you're 9 for 11. Travis, I believe you're at a 6. I believe that's the correct score as of right now. And so we're on to question number 12. Let's see how this one goes for you. Next question. Demi Bennett is better known by what ring name? Is she Mia Yim, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, or Liv Morgan? Who, Mia Yim, by the way, Lowry, I think you'll be happy to know, they've officially changed her Retribution name. She's officially back to Mia Yim, although she's not back on television on either show. It's interesting to see whether she will come back as Mia Yim or whether they will change her gimmick and name entirely. So we'll see what happens with her. Hopefully, we're still praying for the return of Keith Lee. Maybe he'll come back soon. I have not heard anything. Haven't heard no rumors about that one, but I haven't
heard anything major about Keith. No, I mean I want Keith back really badly. I am glad to know that Mia's coming back as herself, and I mean the whole Retribution thing. I mean, if I could mind wipe that from my memory entirely, absolutely. And like a spotless mind sort of thing,
absolutely.
I'd happily do that because it was a horrible mess for everyone involved.
Like, how many more times do we need to? I mean, we had success with Nexus, then there was the Core, and as the Core was simply not as successful as Nexus was, which was unfortunately buried by John Cena. He's not always that great. But Retribution was a sad attempt at that. Ruined Mustafa Ali, in my opinion. Just poor decision. I mean, it was stupid, the things that they were doing. And the Ninja, they just did not understand where they got the idea and how the things that they were doing were beneficial and why they thought it would make a difference. I don't know. There's some really interesting things happening in choices that are being made that I will never understand.
It was embarrassing for everyone involved, and I am stupider for having watched it.
So, is Demi Bennett a former member of Retribution, or is she Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, or Liv Morgan? Gentlemen, do you have an answer?
I felt confident about this before I saw the guesses, and I should have stuck with what I felt. I changed my mind.
Well, actually, Travis, I'm glad you did not change your mind, because the correct answer is B, Rhea Ripley.
Wow. I was thinking Bianca Belair as well. Wow, that was luck. That was luck.
Luck is shining on you tonight, my friend. Bianca Belair, trying to find, there she is. Her real name is Bianca Crawford.
Crawford, that's what it is. Okay. I was thinking for some reason that Bennett was her last name, but yeah.
Hello, my friend Sorrell. What's up, my man? Let's see, we're getting a comment here.
It's true. It's true that it makes no sense to create a new stable that you want to push and then, have them constantly lose. Nothing strikes fear into the heart of other people that you have to wrestle than constant losing streak.
Oh no, Retribution's coming out. I'm gonna get a win. So scared. Yeah. That's a fantastic point, Sorrel.
Yeah. Way to completely bury your new group.
All right, on to question number 13. We're almost there. We are almost at the end. And then the bonus question. Testing your international circuit knowledge once more. Yoshihiro Asai. Is he better known by the name Hideo Itami, Akira Tozawa, Ultimo Dragon, or Shinsuke Nakamura? Yoshihiro Asai. Is he Hideo Itami, Akira Tozawa, Ultimo Dragon, or Shinsuke Nakamura? I suppose I should
go ahead. This is going to be a guess.
Shinsuke Nakamura.
This is going to be a guess. That's what this is going to be.
That's a tough one. That is, if you knew this, I would be more than impressed.
I feel strangely confident about this, but I don't think it's correct. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
Well, let's find out how confident that guess is. Yoshihiro Asai, better known by his name of... Travis, you are on a roll, my friend. Ultimo Dragon is the correct answer. Yoshihiro Asai, otherwise known as Ultimo Dragon. What a fascinating name. Completely Spanish name for a Japanese wrestler.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting combination you got there. Sure, very similar styles in terms of traditionally how those wrestling styles operate in Mexico and Japan, but certainly very interesting.
The cruiserweight division, the cruiserweight division in WCW from 96 to 98, 99, when they raided a lot of the Japan territory and then obviously ECW, some of the best wrestling you'll find. Yep. The Asai moonsault. Yeah,
again, I certainly did not know that either. I'm learning so much. Bro, I forget how much of a wrestling fan you were. If I would have thought harder, I would have had you on the show too, my man. Just made it a fatal four-way instead of a triple threat, which was supposed to be before Channy had to leave. But it's all good. It's all good. We appreciate you showing up in the comments and giving us all the facts. All right. Question number 14. Going back a little bit, I think here. Roy Ferris. Is he better known as Brutus Beefcake, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Bam Bam Bigelow, or the Honky Tonk Man? Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Bam Bam Bigelow, or the Honky Tonk Man? I will say, of these four, Bam Bam was absolutely one of my favorites from this era of wrestling. He one of the original big men who can move and jump and do all things that big men are not supposed to do. I mean, he was pretty great.
I think he's the first really big guy that I ever saw do a moonsault. I think I saw him do a moonsault before I saw Vader do one, and incredibly impressive to see a 400-pound man do a moonsault.
It gives me hope for my future there, Lowry. If they can do it. So, Roy Ferris. Is he Brutus Beefcake, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Bam Bam Bigelow, or the Honky Tonk Man? Gentlemen, your answers. A, Brutus Beefcake, and D, Honky Tonk Man. One of you is absolutely correct.
I can tell you that Brutus Beefcake's real name is Ed Leslie.
That's what it is. Ted
Leslie. I did not know that, but I was going to say, Travis, your luck ran out. You were doing great.
No. I was trying to actually think, and this is sad, but when Brutus Beefcake got into his legal troubles later on in his career, I was trying to think if I could remember the name that came across. For some reason, Roy Ferris just seemed to ring a bell. But I was not confident with that one. Leslie, yes, that now I remember.
I mean, I wish that when he had his legal troubles, he would have gone by the Booty Man.
Would have been much better, yes.
That would have been what he tried to go with, or the Zodiac. The man of many terrible gimmicks.
Yeah, well, the Honky Tonk Man, I mean, I guess.
The Honky Tonk Man, hey, listen.
I'm not a big fan, first of all.
That man had some of the most amazing theme music ever.
Mm-hmm.
And Rhythm and Blues is a good tag team. He's also a cousin of Jerry the King Lawler.
Jerry Lawler, that's what I was trying to figure out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought it was the Poffo brothers. But yeah, Lawler. Yep, that's right now.
Yep,
makes sense. The Memphis territory. Yeah.
Mm. I understand they don't really like each other very much, but they actually.
I wonder if that's a jealousy thing going on there. One had a substantially better career in the art than the other, so maybe, who knows? All right, question number 15. Gentlemen, this is the last of our questions for the regular round. There is a bonus question coming your way, and I'll explain how the bonus works in a moment. But for the final question of this round of You Think You Know, can you tell me the ring name of Nathan Everhart? Is he Jason Jordan, Tyson Kidd, Justin Gabriel, or Heath Slater? Nathan Everhart. Is he better known as Jason Jordan, who is apparently Kurt Angle's son? What an awful storyline there. Tyson Kidd, who unfortunately his career was ended via some substantial injuries. Justin Gabriel, I believe, I don't know what happened to him, but he's in AEW, I think, actually. And Heath Slater, who was bizarre. I know Evan Bourne is. I don't know what
Evan is. Yeah, he's working as Matt Sydal over there.
Justin Gabriel, I always remember being very impressed by his high-flying ability. Oh, he's Ring of Honor. I'm sorry. He
Okay,
is.
I was going to say I didn't think he was AEW. I was trying to go through the AEW roster. I was like, did I miss so many episodes?
I think I was confusing him with Evan
Realize
Bourne.
it.
So easy to do. They're very similar styles. Do we have an answer, gentlemen? Nathan
That'd
Everhart,
be a guess. I'm
I didn't.
Tyson Kidd, Justin
Good
Gabriel,
guess.
Heath Slater. Your guess is as good as mine, and we would have guessed the same thing. Jason Jordan, the illegitimate son of Kurt Angle. What? I don't understand what they were thinking. I really, truly don't understand the writers' room of WWE at times. It's just sad.
I mean, I've watched long enough to know it's not the worst idea I've ever heard, but it's really bad. It's only not the worst idea I've ever heard because I've heard so many like brain-numbingly atrocious ideas and seen so many terrible things that it really like that top 5 or top 10 is so awful that you really have to work to get in there.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good point. All right, your scores at the end of the traditional round of You Think You Know. Travis, 8 out of 15, which is just about the average on this show. So you're right at the line. And Lowry, you're at 11 out of 15, which is more than average. On a good night, one of us will score that high on this show. So congratulations. Inevitably, no matter how the bonus goes, you will be the winner of this episode. So congratulations. However, I'm intrigued to see if you will be able to get the bonus question correctly. Now, on tonight's bonus episode, or bonus question, I was thinking of going, give you the ring name and you tell me the actual name of the person, but that seemed to be very hard. Traditionally, the bonus questions are not multiple choice, and it's just like read it and come up with an answer type thing. But this will be a multiple choice because I felt like that was simply going to be too difficult. However, instead of just naming one superstar in their ring name, you're going to get the name of a tag team. Okay, so you are going to get the real name of a tag team, and you are going to tell me which tag team is the correct answer. Thing that makes the bonus question a little bit more challenging for you, you only have 15 seconds instead of 30. So I will read you the question, same deal, read you the question, read you the options. Then you have 15 seconds to provide me with an answer as opposed to 30. And then I will address the 2 comments that are here in the video, which I'm not sure if you guys can see, but we'll talk about it. Venomous Duo, we'll talk about that in a second. And Sorrel, I'll just throw this up because it's an interesting point that I think we were talking about a little bit ago.
Yep. Very true.
Which is very, I mean, he does seem to take those extremes to really not be, it's entertainment, not wrestling. They can't say or they can't say belts. They can't say a number of things that refer to wrestling per se. It's very interesting, the ins and outs of what announcers can and cannot say. But very interesting. All right. So anyway, 15 seconds on the bonus question. Basically the same thing at the end of that time. Go ahead and flash me your answer. Which tag team is this? Oh, let me get the right timer up here. Oops.
Oh, now it's really tough. We got a timer, but we got no question.
A timer.
No, I know this answer.
Give me your answers. Go ahead. Just guess without seeing it. That's what makes this bonus.
I'm just going to say the Bushwhackers.
I was going to go Demolition.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Speaking of Demolition, what is the name of the tag team made up of Brian James and Monty Sopp? Is this Too Cool? I guess the answer can't be E because I never gave you an E option. So that was silly of me, I suppose. Oh well.
Well, I mean, it could be a really tough question.
I put 5 options in the bonus. So what is the name of the tag team made up of Brian James and Monty Sopp? Is it Too Cool, which is Scotty 2 Hotty and Grandmaster Sexay, in case you don't remember who they are? The Dudley Boys, Devon and Bubba Dudley, Demolition, Axe and Smash, or the New Age Outlaws, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. 15 seconds starts right now. What is the name of the tag team made up of Brian James and Monty Sopp? Is that Too Cool, the Dudley Boys, Demolition, the New Age Outlaws, or the Strike Force? Even though it cannot be the Strike Force because you can't answer that. So what is your answer? A, B, C, or D? Gentlemen. With a score of 12 out of 15.
Oh,
Lowry
you didn't know?
with the correct answer. D, the New Age Outlaws.
Little two side stories here, real quick. My dad, many years ago, when he was living in Florida, he and Monty Sop were on a like a softball team together. Played with each other for a little while. He had no idea who he was, of course. I mean, he didn't have any idea that he was going to be a big deal or care about the business in any way. But anyway, I mean, he played with him, said he was a nice guy. I have met Tito a couple of times at signing. Super nice guy. I actually have his number in my phone right now because when I was teaching a class on professional wrestling, I was trying to work out a deal for him to come in and talk to the class. And so I've got a couple of wrestlers' numbers in my phone, and Tito happens to be one of them.
I remember, vividly remember Legends of Wrestling. I don't know if you remember that video game from the early 2000s. I don't know what it was about Tito Santana, but I mean, this is a memory I will never forget in my life. We're playing, this is probably PlayStation 1, maybe early stages of PlayStation 2. And my sister, my younger sister, my dad, and I would play Legends of Wrestling all the time. And my sister's choice, for some reason, she is not a wrestling fan at all, but she was always Tito Santana. And she would always destroy us no matter what. Whenever she was Tito, she was getting that win. And it was really a shot to the heart there because I consider myself a rather large fan of wrestling. And to lose to her over and over again, who she doesn't even know who she has, is just it's a tragic experience.
Tito Santana, maybe the definition of just a solid wrestler. No charisma, no flair, nothing special about him, but could just go in and give you a good wrestling match.
Well, I mean, I thought Strike Force was an excellent tag team. I mean, really, really great tag team back in the 80s. And Tito was the sort of guy who, when they broke that tag team up, unfortunately, he kind of fell to the wayside a little bit compared to Martel. But I mean, if throughout the rest of his career with the WWE, if they ever had a new guy they brought in, they wanted to see if that guy could work or not, they would put him in the ring with Tito. And then when Tito came back to Gorilla, he would either tell Vince yeah, that guy's all right, or we don't need this dude in our locker room. Because Tito could wrestle you one time and figure out either, yeah, you can work, or you haven't got it and you're not ever going to get it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
We have the Venomous Duo. Are we taking questions? We will now. The show is officially over. Lowry, congratulations on the win. So now, as long as you both want to stay here, I mean, I don't have anything to do. I know it's getting kind of late, much later than usual. But he did have this Venomous Duo did have a question that would be interesting to talk about. And if you have more questions, throw them in the chat if you have time for it. As long as you guys are willing, we'll just kind of chat around. So where do we rank JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield, all time? It's a really tough question. I'll let you two take the lead there.
Travis, you can go first.
Yeah, I was never personally a big JBL fan. Even coming up as his time with Ron Simmons with the APA, I never was a big fan of his individual the JBL character, but I know he was, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was labeled as a hard worker, hard in the sense that, he'd hit you and you'd feel it. He was stiff for sure. But I don't know. There's something about me that I wouldn't necessarily say I've grown to appreciate him over the years. But I think he definitely has a place in history. And he's part of that era, that transitional era, that John Cena kind of held the mantle for, and they had some good matches together. And yeah, I wouldn't rank him high all time, but he's a respectable wrestler for sure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would fall into kind of the same area. I mean, I definitely respect the run that JBL had as the billionaire sort of character, the run he had near the end of his career. I thought it was really nice that a guy who clearly loved the business so much and who had put his heart and soul into it, got to have that really great run. And we talked a lot about guys who don't have charisma tonight. One of the things I can say about JBL is he had a lot of charisma to me. I felt like once he found that character and it was so close to who he was in real life, that he could kind of draw on that, things got a lot better for him. If anything, I felt bad for him that he didn't find that like 10 years earlier, so he could have had a much better career beforehand. But all-time list, he's not even in my top 100 all-time wrestlers. He's not that good. Once JBL got in the ring, things could only become mediocre for me. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. The best matches he probably ever had in his life were with Eddie Guerrero, and 100% of that credit goes to Eddie Guerrero.
Right.
Yeah, I know I'm being a little rough on the guy. I don't mean to be too hard on him, but when I think about top wrestlers of all time, I'm going back to like the 1940s and 50s and thinking about some of the guys that wrestled back then. Your Lou Theszes and people like that have to be included in there, and Frank Gotch and folks like that are all-time greats to me. I will say one fun story about the stiffness of JBL. When he debuted at Survivor Series, he was on a team opposing The Undertaker. And The Undertaker, I think, talks about this on one of the WWE network shows. But when JBL came into the match, he got Taker in the corner and he started punching him. And he was so excited to be, in a WWE ring on a pay-per-view that he was punching him a little too hard. And apparently Taker told him, something like, "God damn, do I owe you money?" And he just told him, like, "What you're going to do right now is you're going to go tag Shawn Michaels in, and I'm going to wrestle Shawn for the rest of this match. You sit your ass in the corner." And apparently JBL sat the rest of that match in the corner and thought to himself, "Well, it was a fun time while it lasted. I am going to be fired after this because I pissed off one of the most powerful people in the company." So that was great. I'll look back on this night fondly.
The start and end of my illustrious career.
Yeah. What was your WWE career like? Well, I punched The Undertaker too hard one time, and then now I bag groceries. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But no, I didn't. That's not the way it worked out for him, thankfully.
That's
they became good friends afterwards. Absolutely, they Taker didn't hold it against him for long, but in the moment, I think he was just like, "Listen, bud, I know you're excited, but I've been here for a while."
And I get it. Stepping into the ring with Taker is like, you got to be special because and it was pretty clear from the beginning of Undertaker's with that gimmick. And really, he had success in every gimmick he had. Even the American Badass had some relatively decent success because he is just that type of personality that you would believe looking at him, all of 6'10", however tall he is, and just the way that he's built, the way that he looks, the way that he talks. You believe that he will absolutely beat the shit out of you no matter what. And so like any gimmick he had, pretty much you're going to believe that you're in trouble. So I completely understand that it was like, that nervous energy you get and just losing it. In terms of the question, I was never a JBL fan. In fact, he's one of my least favorite characters simply because I think he led the way. I think that his gimmick as JBL was so different than Bradshaw, and I actually liked Bradshaw as a character a little bit more in terms of just being that type of. Bradshaw's like someone that looked like he could hurt you. JBL is like, well, he's just kind of there. That was in my opinion as a wrestler looking at the character. But then I think that we got unfortunately a ripoff version of JBL in Alberto Del Rio, who I also don't like very much as a wrestler. But those characters seem so intricately linked, and you could see kind of taking one from another. And I don't know, just not a big fan. I think it's the pompous attitude that really just irks me a lot because it's believable. And I guess that's a great thing for their character work, but it just made me dislike them so much as a character. It was hard to appreciate them for their in-ring abilities or lack thereof.
I mean, I think that, JBL left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth as a human being, because of the way they treated people outside the ring. He had a really bad reputation for being bully and for mistreating people. The Mauro Ronaldo situation was really awful and completely unnecessary. I really liked Berto's in-ring work. I thought he was really great in the ring, but man, as a person, Berto's real rough.
It's an interesting question from a Venomous Duo here. HBK, was his career better than that of The Undertaker? I remember watching the end of the streak. It was the most heartbreaking night of my life in terms of watching wrestling. That I still won't understand. I can get the Brock Lesnar and losing to Brock Lesnar. I'm more surprised by the fact that Mark Calaway would take that loss and that he would decide to end this. What's interesting about the streak ending was the streak ended and it didn't mean anything for his career because he still wrestled after that. Had it been, the streak is over, I'm retiring, that's different than, okay, I'm going to lose to Brock Lesnar and break the streak that I've had my entire career and had some fantastic matches against wrestlers who were much more deserving of a win than Brock Lesnar was. And then for him to wrestle, I mean, you can't really call it wrestling, but that match with John Cena that lasted all of 25 and a half seconds, a couple years after that, you have losing to Roman Reigns. Again, it didn't do that much for Roman because at the time Roman was a face or at least a bad heel. If it was Roman now, I could see losing because it would mean something to him as a character and as a wrestler. But having him lose to Roman at that time, it was simply unimpressive to me. And so I'm surprised that Mark Calaway, The Undertaker, with as much pull as he has in the company, would be willing to lose something so important. I feel like it would be important to him, at least, to someone like Brock, who a part-timer who, I don't think deserved it. But interesting to see both of your thoughts also. And Shawn Michaels is one of my favorites in the history of ever. So I think that for me, Undertaker will still go down as the greater wrestler. But I don't know. It's interesting.
I can do this really fast. Calaway has the better career. Hickenbottom is the better wrestler.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when I think of Shawn Michaels, just talking individual situations or incidents, you go Shawn Michaels, Montreal Screwjob, in-ring performer, DX, things of that nature. It's funny you did bring up the streak ending, Albin, and I think it's, not to sidebar too much, but it is interesting to see what that did for Brock Lesnar. And I think McMahon looked at that as an opportunity to push Brock, but also sell a lot of merchandise, let the man, even though being a part-timer, carry the belt for a while in the years that followed. And I don't know if we look at Brock the same way now, that we would had he lost the Undertaker, and Undertaker would have kept his streak. So yeah, that's a really good debate. I agree 100%. Michael's better in-ring performer, maybe the best of all time, better career. If you want to look at body of work from the time Undertaker entered in 91, he was with WCW and some other promotions before that, but body of work career wise, Undertaker for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to a certain degree, I mean, there's a little bit of this that's almost unfair to Shawn when we do this comparison, right? Because Shawn has to step away from the business in the absolute prime of his life, in part because of the Undertaker, by the way. He injures his back in that Royal Rumble match with the Undertaker, the casket match. He takes the wild bump to the outside and hits the small of his back on the casket. And now, I mean, in fairness to the Undertaker, Shawn's back was messed up before that match. I mean, that was just like the thing that tipped all the dominoes over. If it hadn't been that, it probably would have been something else. But And Sean was in a super bad place. So who knows how long he could have kept like burning the candle at both ends before he would have detonated. But yeah, you know, when you lose like 4 or 5 years of your career in your early 30s, when your body should be at the absolute peak of its physical abilities, and I mean, you know, look, like 1995 through 1997 or 98, like nobody could touch Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, Sean could get in the ring with absolutely anybody, and he could either make you look great or he could make you look terrible. If you were Vader, he made you look terrible. You know, if you were any number of other people, he made you look great. I still feel bad for Vader when I watch the 1996 SummerSlam. Like, my heart hurts for him because poor Leon didn't deserve that. Come on. But you know, it's a good example of how unprofessional Sean was as a person back then. I mean, you know, or you know, WrestleMania 12, he just tells Jose Lothario, get the hell out of my ring. You know, like, this is my moment. You get out of here. Like, this isn't you. You didn't win this title. This is me. So yeah, you know, but I mean, I think Sean could have had the best career of all time if he had been able to wrestle without any interruption. But that interruption, you know, I mean, it's like, is Muhammad Ali? What would Muhammad Ali have been like if he would have been able to box without interruption? We'll never know. You know, Joe DiMaggio being able to play baseball without an interruption. Who knows? You know.
And I wonder how much of that, you know, that immaturity or, you know, basic disrespect for the sport, you know, some of those things. You look at the Undertaker and you don't hear any stories like that. You know, he appreciated the business, he appreciated his opponents and the business. And you wonder, had Sean had that same reputation, would he be looked at slightly differently? You know, or if, say, Undertaker had that bad boy persona where he didn't give a damn and, you know, kind of disrespected, would he be looked at differently? So that's an interesting conversation to be had, I think.
Yeah, you know, and there's a part of me that wonders sometimes with Sean. You know, I saw an interview with Kanye West one time where they were asking him about sort of, you know, some of the crazy, wild stuff that he did outside of making albums, and like, don't you think this is taking away from your artistry and all these other things that you're trying to do? And his answer, I thought, was actually really interesting. He said, you know, the things that you hate about me outside of my music are part of what helps me make the music that I'm making. Like, I wouldn't be the same artist if I wasn't this person. So like, you can't hate me for what I'm doing outside of the studio and then say you love my albums, because that craziness that you're attacking on the one hand is my creative fuel that I'm using to make these records. And I think maybe some of the same could be true about Sean. You know, I mean, yeah, Sean was, by all accounts, I have never heard someone who knew Sean in the 1990s say Shawn Michaels was a great guy and you wanted to be around him if you weren't in the Clique. Now, the Clique guys, they'll say he was great, but if you weren't in the Clique, pretty much everyone else agrees. Mm-hmm. Shawn Michaels was a douchebag. But when you got in the ring with him, I mean, you know, it was poetry. It was art. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have wanted to be in there with anybody else. You know, all you have to do is stand there, and he's going to make you look like $1 million. So I don't know if he would have been the same guy without that. Like,
yeah, he really, for a while, he lived the character, and maybe you're right. Maybe that's what made him so unique and over the top.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he had a chip on his shoulder. He thought he had something to prove. I don't know that I would agree that he did, but you know, he went out there every night like he was proving that he was the best that had ever done the damn thing, and I dare you to find somebody better.
Such an
yeah, he said that he did do that.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot too. About this particular. It makes sense. No Montreal Screwjob happened the second time. Is that the worst? I have two questions that we'll do with this one because it's here. Is that the worst scandal the worst in-ring scandal to ever exist in the history of wrestling?
Well, it's the in-ring part of that is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sense. I don't know. Let me think about that for a moment before I answer that.
Yeah, I don't. I off the top of my head, I would say yes. But maybe we're creatures of the moment in a sense, even though it was 1997. Maybe there were some things in the 70s and some smaller promotions we're not thinking of that we may have heard of. But I almost feel like back then people policed the sport differently. Had something like that happened in the AWA in 1978, somebody was probably going to die. There was going to be a dead body in the locker room afterwards. But that the only other thing, because I just read an article on it recently, was the Jeff Jarrett, Hulk Hogan, Vince Russo debacle at the end of the WCW run, which I think may have been a work shoot. Still, there's a lot of questions about that. So that doesn't even necessarily hold a candle. But yeah, from off the top of my head, definitely one of the most biggest in ring things ever. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm gonna first of all let me answer the chat there for a second. I can assure you that Shawn Michaels would have been beaten to a pulp by the Undertaker. Shawn, Tito Santana story that Tito told me one time when I met him was that they had been on a plane together, and Tito had gotten up to use the bathroom, and when he came back, Shawn had taken his seat. And when he got back to the seat, he told Shawn, "I'm going to give you 10 seconds to get up and to walk back to your seat. And if you don't, we're going to have a fight. And it's not a fight that happens in a ring. We're going to have a real fight. And I think we both know what's going to happen if that goes on." And sure enough, Shawn got up and he did exactly what Tito asked, because he knew what would happen. Nothing against Tito. Tito, big dude, in great shape. But he wasn't, 6'10" or whatever Taker was at the height of his power, and 335 pounds. Mark Calaway would have murdered Shawn Michaels. Instantly murdered him. So I'm going to cheat a little bit on this. I'm going to say technically the biggest in-ring scandal that I think ever happened in the wrestling business was the death of Owen Hart.
No,
because he dies in the ring.
Certainly.
And he's not the first wrestler to die in the ring, I grant you, but the way that it happened, and the fact that they kept going with the show after he died.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I remember when I was teaching, my class on wrestling several years ago, and I actually had a lot of people in that class who were not wrestling fans. And when I explained to them, okay, well, Owen dies around the middle of the show, and then they keep going with it after that. They were shocked, and we had to spend about 5 minutes with me explaining, like, how could they possibly have kept going? Like, in what world would one of your performers drop from the ceiling, smash, onto the ring post, and then you would be like, well, we got to keep going though. And it's the sort of thing where I am so numb to who Vince McMahon is and the way that he does business, that in my mind, even then, and what was it, 98, 99, I was like, well, yeah, of course he's going to keep going. Yeah, I mean, was there ever a question about this? It never even occurred to me that he wouldn't keep going. But that's because I've seen so many terrible things from him that I'm just like, well, yeah, that's who this man is. Come on. And it took me a minute to like go, oh yeah, you haven't been desensitized to this yet, right? You haven't had the humanity beaten out of you by this business yet. Oh yeah, sure, that's what would happen, of course. And yeah, I mean, you're right though. If something like the Montreal Screwjob happened anywhere else, especially earlier on, I mean, somebody would have died. Although there are a lot of people who think the Screwjob was pre-planned to a certain degree, and that more people were really in on it, including Brett, than talked about it. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. There seemed to be some real life heat in there. It seemed to catch him by genuine surprise, and the aftermath of all of that seemed to be that of a real. I mean, you have to be a really great actor to sell that type of animosity. And do I think Bret Hart has that great of an acting career ahead of him? Probably not. Otherwise, he would have gone professional in the acting realm. But I guess
speaking like a man who's never seen Lonesome Dove, sir, or his star turn on Mad TV.
Oh yes, his voiceover work on The Simpsons. I mean,
Yes.
the only other question that I had that I want to cover real quick, because it is getting rather late, but I'm having a great time. I really don't care about sleeping. Travis, I might be asleep if you come to the school tomorrow. I might be sleeping at the table, but it'll be fine.
Yep.
Dang, what was the question? Oh, it goes back to a conversation we were having a couple minutes ago. Who is the one wrestler in your mind that you wish their career would have gone better based on injuries, if injuries were never around, if they strictly could have stayed healthy, if there was any outside of the ring things that held them back? But who is that wrestler for you that you feel like would really have been a greater star in the WWE, injuries notwithstanding, personal life and in that type of stuff notwithstanding? Who is your favorite in that aspect?
Oof. There are a lot of answers to this question.
I know. I wanted you to go first here so I could collect myself.
I'll go first so that you both can think, because I had the question. For me, and this goes back to one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, I am a big Jeff Hardy fan. And, you know, yes, he had a World Heavyweight Championship at one point on SmackDown, I believe. But I feel like, you know, he battled with so many demons for so long. And that went from WWE, his time in TNA. I mean, there's that infamous match with Sting where he came under the influence to the ring, and they simply had to end the match, not the way that Hardy intended it for it to be, but he was, I mean, in no condition to be in a ring at the time. And he's battled with substance issues his entire professional career, even before I watched the Hardy's documentary years ago, and that was really very interesting to see. So for me, with as big a Jeff Hardy fan as I am, I would have loved to see what his life and his career would have looked like had substance issues and injuries never been a factor. I think he really could have been. Now, he didn't obviously have the size to be a Vince McMahon, you know, face of the company. However, he certainly had the athletic ability and willing to put his body on the line at every turn to be able to do something interesting, I think.
So I'm gonna cheat here. I'll have two answers to this question. My first answer would be Brian Pillman. I thought Brian was one of the transcendent talents of his generation. Unfortunately, by the time he came to the WWE, he had already been in a horrific car crash that, by all rights, should have killed him. When you read about that car crash, I mean, you get through every line of it, and you're just like, how did this guy survive? Like, why didn't he die in this? So the neck injury that he suffered from that debilitated him to the point that he really couldn't do any of the high flying work that he was so well known for. I mean, you know, you watch him in the late 80s, early 90s, and the NWA and WCW, and I mean, he is just phenomenal, you know. And if he could have had the control of his body in 1997 or 98 that he had back then, and of course, then if he hadn't died, you know, shortly after coming to the WWE and had gotten to have a full career there, I mean, I think he would have done incredible things. The other person that similarly had a very short career in the WWE that I would have loved to have seen, number one, with full control of his body and with a longer career, is the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. You know, Kerry commits suicide not long after coming to the company. He did have a run with the Intercontinental title, but he could have done so much more. And he had not told the company that he only had one foot when he entered the WWE. He had been in a motorcycle accident and lost a foot, and he just didn't tell anybody. He had a wooden foot that he put in his boot to wrestle with. But before, you know, he lost a leg or a foot, I mean, you watch some of the stuff he did when he was working for his daddy's promotion in Texas, and he was, I mean, you talk about a guy that one of the most, you know, good-looking, charismatic, talented men you'll ever see in the wrestling business. I mean, Kerry Von Erich he had all the buildings of a megastar, and it just never got realized outside of that promotion.
Yeah, Kerry Von Erich. I mean, they talk about him like he was a god down there in the Von Erich family, but he was, I've read some stuff about him and just seen, some stuff that he's been part of. I mean, I go back and forth. I guess it's not really injury related. I know one guy, he spent some time off just doing television when I was growing up, that I always thought, I just don't know how this man wasn't. If you do a Mount Rushmore, and that could be an entire podcast of its own if you haven't already done one of those, Aubin.
I think we'll make it happen.
I mean, I have an objective Mount Rushmore, but this guy, if you're looking at just favorites, Mr. Perfect was one that I just don't know how he wasn't pushed to the moon. I know he did have some injuries there in the early and mid 90s where he was doing some managerial work for Ric Flair. He was on television in prime time doing fantastic things, but his in-ring ability, his mic work, his charisma, the vignettes that they did with him, it was perfect in my eyes. Kurt Angle, I know, battled some injuries, but I mean, he's a guy that, I don't know if he could have had a better WWE career. I guess one guy that I always remember being injured, but again, had such an incredible career, and we don't even really remember him being injured, just with all the different knee injuries. And I think we remember the comebacks more than we actually remember the injuries, was Triple H. He battled through a lot of injuries over his career. So yeah, if you're just looking injury wise, I don't really know if anyone comes to my head. I was sitting here like jogging my brain, trying to think, who missed a big push or who was in line for something that an injury prevented them from achieving. And I couldn't really think of anyone, but it's just one of those things where when the podcast ends, I'll say, oh yeah, I remember that or that, so, but yeah, those are some guys off the top of my head that I just think to myself, could they have been bigger? I mean, did they reach their ceiling? I don't know.
I mean, I definitely agree that Kurt Hennig should have been a world heavyweight champion. I mean, one of the great talents of all time. And yeah, the back injury that he suffered in, I think it was like 92, really just derailed him to a certain degree. But, the story goes, and I'm not 100% sure of the veracity of this, but the story is that he was originally intended to win the Rumble and face Hogan for the belt at WrestleMania 6 and then go over Hogan and become world champion, and that Hogan refused to drop the belt to him and to do a program with him because he thought it was unrealistic for a man his size to lose to someone the size of Kurt Hennig. And, Hogan had all the power you could possibly want in the world in 1989, 1990. So he can push somebody out of the way like that. Much like, talking about guys who didn't really get as big of a push as they could have in the WWE. Steve Austin refused to work with Jeff Jarrett in the WWE because, and this is true, he didn't like the way that he came off the ropes.
Wow.
He thought that he looked weak when he hit the ropes. And he said, I won't work with a guy who can't hit the ropes hard. And that was the end of Jeff Jarrett's push as the number one guy. Because, in the late 90s, if Steve Austin says, nope, that's the end of it. And in fairness, if you go look at the way that Jeff Jarrett hits the ropes, he could hit the ropes harder. Not wrong. I don't know if it means that he shouldn't have gotten a world championship push.
Sure.
But it does hit the ropes kind of rough. So, yeah, it is very specific. Yes, it is.
But, I'll throw a name out there that may not be too familiar to some of the viewers and listeners, WCW. And he was a victim of some injuries, but he was also a victim of bad writing. Mortis, who then became Chris Kanyon. Fantastic in-ring performer, had some unique mic skills. He had some charisma, but he never really achieved, a level of success that we're familiar with. And I don't remember if he ended up taking his own life. I know he did die maybe 5 years ago or so. But yeah, he was another one that I used to look at and think, he could be better, Mr.
Nemeth is an interesting inclusion to this conversation.
Yeah,
we spoke previously, I think, on the last podcast that you were on, Lowry, about our dearest friend. Is it Nick? Is that his first name?
Yeah, Nick Nemeth.
Yeah.
I mean, I have mixed feelings about Dolph. I kind of feel like Dolph actually has hit his ceiling. I mean, Did Dolph deserve a better run with the belt than what he got? Oh yeah, I mean he didn't get the shot he deserved. I mean Vince didn't ever really believe in him. Much like Vince didn't really believe in Rey Mysterio when Rey won the title. I mean, Vince hated Rey's run with the world title, and the only reason that he allowed Rey to win the world title was because of what happened to Eddie. And, he felt like you can make a real story arc out of this, which is not fair because I mean Rey Mysterio Jr. is one of the great wrestlers. We talk about great wrestlers of all time. Rey Mysterio Jr. is one of the great wrestlers of all time. He deserved better. I mean, but here's the thing. I don't know. I feel like Ziggler stuck around for so long, and he's had so many opportunities. I mean, it's just hard for me to feel that bad for Nick. Nick's had a pretty good career. I mean, I can't really look at his career and say like you haven't really gotten what you wanted out of this. I mean, I don't know.
I think the highlight of Dolph Ziggler, the highlight outside of the Spirit Squad, of course, which is that comment I saw come in, the highlight of Dolph Ziggler's career probably will always be the pop that he received when he cashed in his Money in the Bank against Alberto Del Rio. That's one that I like to go back to every now and then and say, wow, he had them. That was pretty good.
I think everything about Dolph Ziggler I hate the most is his storyline romance with Vicky Guerrero, because her voice ruined everything that she ever touched, in my opinion. That excuse me will forever haunt my dreams and nightmares. And so with Edge, with Dolph, every storyline when she was being the overbearing general manager, I just could not attach myself to anything once that storyline was in place there. But
I'll also say one other guy that I feel bad for in his run was Shane Douglas. Not in his 1995 run, but in his 1990 run with the WWE. He was actually meant to be a really big star. And if you go back and watch the 1990 Royal Rumble, he's one of the last 3 or 4 guys in the ring, goes for about 45 minutes in that Rumble, something like that. Don't quote me on the times here because I'm having to spitball this off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around there. He had one of those runs where it was very obvious they were trying to make the point that this is a really great guy. He's going to be a big star for us for a long time, and we want you to remember who he is. And unfortunately for him, Shane's dad got really sick right around this time, and he had to stop wrestling for a little while to go home and take care of his father, and it just really derailed all the momentum he had. He never got back on track from it. I mean, he had a great career in ECW, did a lot of cool things. I mean, I will always remember him taking the NWA title and throwing it in the trash and being like, hey, I don't give a damn about this title, screw this thing. I mean, it's one of the great promos of all time. If you've never watched it before, go watch that promo. It's excellent. And I mean, Dean Douglas's work was terrible, but the Dean Douglas character was terrible. And I mean, he got shit on in that run in the WWE, but I mean, he got on the wrong side of the clique real fast, and he just he had no chance after that. But Shane Douglas was a better wrestler than he was ever given credit for in the major promotions.
Yeah, he had some really good matches in ECW actually with Taz. Him and Taz went back for the world title for maybe even over a year back and forth. They had some good matches. But yeah, you want to talk about a guy that's been on the wrong side of history, got on the bad side of the clique and the bad side of Ric Flair. I mean, those are two entities. It's really hard to come back from there.
Yeah. And I mean, and he was in a great tag team with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat when he was in WCW. Did some really great work. I mean, really, really good stuff. So, I mean, I feel like people sleep on early Shane Douglas, and early Shane Douglas was a hell of a lot better than he gets given credit for.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, We have got about 2 podcasts here. I think I'm going to edit this and take the beginning 45 and then the last hour and a half, and I'm going to post that as its own episode. Outside You Think You Know. So thank you guys so much, and I will most definitely be contacting both of you. And Sorrel, maybe you'll be around for the next one where we can, and Channy, who will actually hopefully be here for the next time, be able to cover the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. That sounds like a fascinating conversation to have. So start thinking now your Mount Rushmore of singles competition and your Mount Rushmore of tag competition, because I think that is a truly fascinating conversation to have. So be prepared for that. We'll get our schedules worked out and try and figure out a day to make that work. So Travis and Lowry, thank you so much for joining the show tonight. This has been more than I ever imagined, and I hope you both had a good time and are willing to come back again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right, guys. This is Gus. And Gus says, good night. See you guys, everybody. Thank you so much.
See you later, everybody.
Take care.